Hello everybody, welcome to Hemp Production from Start to Finish, Proven Practices and Theory. For those of you who are unfamiliar with me, my name is Andrew Bish. I operate two companies, Bish Enterprises and Hemp Harvest Works. Bish Enterprises is owned and operated, a family-owned and operated business, founded by my grandfather in 1976 and owned by my father Brad Bish and mother Christy Bish. In addition to my parents, I'm proud to work alongside my brother here, Jacob Bish. We build large-scale custom headers, research headers, header accessories, and are famous for the combine community for our header adapters. In 2008, I founded the Hemp Harvest Works company to better sell and market our Bish products that we had identified worked in the hemp industry. Along the way, we identified that there was an opportunity to serve the greater hemp market with a lot more products, and so we brought those into our product lineup, and now we sell products from some of our competitors. We now sell transplanting products, drying products, harvesting products, and even storage products for the hemp producer today. So, here's a couple pictures of me. My travels around the country have led me to a lot of different places. You can see me here in a combine. That's where we originally started with grain and fiber. Over here, working my way into CBD, and that's where we spent the last few years of our business developing products for that industry as well. In addition to my jobs, I am a board member of the Hemp Industries Association. I am the president of the Nebraska Hemp Industries Association chapter, a board member of the Colorado Hemp Industries Association, and the vice president of the Hemp Feed Coalition. So, with all the boring stuff said, let's get on to the show. One thing I like to do when I talk about the ways in which that we work today in agriculture, I like to take us back into the ways that we worked prior to this. So, right here, we can see in the teens, there was equipment like this here, a hemp turning machine or an international harvester cutting hemp. That's back in the teens. Here's some stockpiles of bundled hemp that have been put together. This is what binding looks like over here. Here's a great video, give you an idea of what this actually looks like. So when you take a look at this video, and by the way, you can see this on the internet, Google Hemp for Victory, and you will see this presentation that was put together actually by the U.S. government for the war effort. And when you look at this equipment, you can kind of see why we had to develop some new equipment. Obviously, this isn't the type of thing that's safe for people to use, and the way in which we've been producing hemp lately has been a little bit different than this. These guys here are growing it for the stalk material, and that is not growing it for the cannabinoids, which is most commonly grown in the United States today, is not something that they even knew about back then. So all of this equipment that they had in the early part of the century was really geared towards fiber production. So when we talk about hemp production, we really need to make sure that we've planned ahead. We're getting into planting season right now, so some things to think about. Do you have a sale for your crop? If you do, are you growing for grain? Are you doing an oil product? Fiber, smokable, what is the output that you're looking for here? And then we got to keep in mind, depending on which one of those that you're going to enter the marketplace with, what is the condition that your customer wants the crop. So if you're going to an extraction facility, knowing what the size of material is, how much woody material they'll accept, that's really important. If you're going to sell the seed, what the moisture level needs to be at for the seed, whether they're buying organic or conventional grain seed. That's really important. And then when you're looking at the stock material, do they want it in a bale? If so, do they want it in a round bale, or do they want it in a square bale? Things like that are things that we need to be considering. The word biomass is often used in this industry. If biomass is written anywhere in any type of contract, that's probably a problem for you. Biomass is just plant material. So we need to define what that looks like. Make sure you understand what your customer is looking for in this end product that you're working to produce. So With hemp, there's multiple commodity types. It's a lot different than a lot of different crops out there in the way that there's so many things that we can do with it. You know, there's only so many things we can do with radishes and corn, but hemp has a lot of different things, whether it be the stock material, the grain material, or the flower material. There's a lot of ways we can go with this plant. So look at pricing. You know, here's some pricing from January 2020, which is really similar to where we are today. As you can see here, we're looking at 72 cents, possibly down to 62 cents. That's per percentage point per pound is how CBD flower is calculated. This is what the market has done when you look at CBD pricing over the course of the past year. In January 2019, we had really high numbers here, just over $3.50, even getting as high as a little over $4 for flower in July of last year, before that came crashing down to where we are today at the 62 to 72 cent mark. Same story with winterized crude and isolate. So let's talk a little bit about cost of production before we get into all the different ways of working with this plant. So let's take a look here. This is a horticultural method, example A. What we've got set up here for an example, we've got $3 clones. Let me change this out here so I can do a little pointer. There we go. So we've got $3 clones. We're doing 60 by 60 inch spacing. We're going to expect 1.5 pounds of plant material. We've got total input costs of $5,226. That's just our genetics. And our current flower price per point, we're going to say, is 75 cents. So we take a look here, and we're just going to point out the 5% and 10% marks so that you can see really where this net revenue starts to come into play. So in this scenario, again, going back to where we are, we're paying $3 for clones, 60 by 60, input cost of $5,226. We need to make sure that we've got a 6% product at minimum before we're going to break even on this. Before our net revenue becomes positive. And then it's over here at 10%, where our net revenue is actually equal to what our input costs are, and we start making some serious money. So over here, 6% CBD in this equation is going to get us $654 an acre. Realistically, you've probably got some input costs that we didn't calculate, since all we're calculating is seed here. So if you're not into at least 7-8%, you're probably going south on this crop instantly. And if you're not able to hold the 1.2 pounds, then that's another problem that you're going to have. Let's take a look at this next option, example B here. So now we've done a little bit different. We're doing feminized seed in this example, 30 by 30 inch row spacing, so a lot more plants per acre. Smaller plants, 1.2 pounds, we're going to estimate, and our input costs are going to be a little bit higher, $69.70, and that's just because we got more plants going into the field than we had before. Same price for flower. So right here in this situation, we do come in positive at a lower percentage. And so at 3%, you could make potentially $2,400 an acre. But one of the challenges that you have here, again, with both of these is the risk factor. We've got nearly $6,000 an acre in input costs before we've had any type of labor added to it, any type of tractor started, or any type of land rent or taxes. So it's very much a situation of putting in a lot of risk up front with this type of crop. Again, can you make some money? You know, if you come in at 10% CBD, with that many plants in the field at that weight, you stand to make $24,000 an acre if everything goes well. But again, you're putting in a big gamble. You've got almost $7,000 in input costs on here. So now let's look at this next example, an agricultural example. We're going to do non-feminized seed. We're going to pay $10 a pound for this. We're going to put in 30 by 7 inch plant spacing using a planter. a lot smaller plants, but our total input costs are only $40 on this, before the tractor. So let's take a look at how this plays out. So our net revenue and net profit lines are very close together because our input costs are so low, and we start to make revenue almost instantaneously. So very low risk. Even if you come into 1% CBD crop in this particular situation, you still stand to net $1,080. That's a lot more than what you got out there for corn right now. Or if we get into 2%, we get into 2%, 3%, 4%, 5% here, $5,500 an acre on $40 of input. Again, for the seed, we haven't factored in the tractor or anything like that. So a lot less risk and a reasonable amount of reward here. Let's do this with a tighter row spacing. So now we're going to put in a lot smaller, a lot tighter row spacing. Our input costs are going to go in a little bit higher because we've got more seed, because we're doing 7.5 by 2.5 inch plant spacing this time. So we're using a drill to put this in. Let's take a look at this. Same situation. So right away at the beginning, you're starting to make money. We come up here, 2% CBD, $3,800, 3%, $5,800 per acre. We get into the 5%, $9,881 per acre. So you can see from going into an agricultural method that you've got a lot less risk with potentially still a very high reward. The downside of doing this is most extractors are not set up to work in these ranges. So you have to be very careful if you go into that type of system that you're working with an extractor that can work in these ranges, and that the efficiency is going to be there so that you're still able to make money after you've done the extraction on this. So that's just an example of what some inputs and outputs look like when we're working with the CBD crop. So you got to look at the next thing. Now that we've looked at pricing, we start to understand what this costs to get into it, what our costs to come out of it look like. Where's your marketplace? So if we're going into flower production, what is CBD? I'm not going to go into and explain what a cannabinoid is, but at the end of the day, if you're farming, you need to know what CBD is, because this flower, the green material, isn't what you're farming. It's the cannabinoids that are on top of that green material. So if you take a look at this plant here, we can continue to zoom in, and you can start to see those clear balls. Those are going to be the cannabinoids. Some of those are going to have CBD. Some of them might have THC, CBG, CBN. All sorts of cannabinoids are going to be on there. Typically, if you're growing for CBD, you're after high percentage CBD plants. But if you zoom in with an electron microscope, that's what they look like. And that's what we've got to capture, and that's what we got to harvest. So you've decided that you're going to grow hemp for cannabinoids. You've got many different ways of doing it that we've discussed, agriculturally, horticulturally. Let's take a look at what this looks like. Here's a transplanter. If you've never seen transplanting happening, this is what's occurring. This gentleman here is taking this seedling or clone, putting it in that cup. It's going into the ground, and it's being packed into the dirt. A little bit of water is being placed into there. This is the option that you'd use, again, for seedlings or clones. Mid-season cultivation can be, again, depending on how you're going to do this, very labor intensive or not. So if you are doing an agricultural method, you might use a pull behind crop cultivator. If you're doing a horticultural method, you might use field labor or even a mower or shredder if you're doing something organic with really wide row spacing. We recommend using one of our drone setups and also having satellite imagery. Here's an example of the Rantizo drone. This is produced by a company in Iowa. Really neat unit, a great way to be able to spray. Depending on what state you're in, you may have items that you can apply to your crop, and this is an easy way of doing it. Something like this can do 14 acres an hour without a lot of effort. Okay, So now we've worked through all of our mid-season cultivation. Let's take a look at what harvest looks like. So again, multiple ways to do this depending on how you've grown it. Here we've got an example of a stripper header. And this is that same stripper header running through the field. So basically this item is going through and stripping material off the plant and offloading it into a cart. This is an example of a header known as the clean cut header, and this material is being distributed into that cart. This is great for whole plant harvesting. We'll cut the plant at about 10 to 12 inches off the ground. And then this is our super crop LP produced right here at Bish Enterprises. With this header here, we're actually doing in-field chopping. We are running along the ground to pick up the branches, and then we're folding them up and then leaving about 30% of that stock material in the field as we're going through and chopping that. That's improving the drying throughput quite dramatically with this particular item. And there you can see some of that stock material left behind that we're not having to bring through the drying system. Here's an example of the one-row harvester. This is called the hemp handler. Something like this can do about 2.5, possibly 3 acres an hour, depending on what your row spacing looks like. Great way to delicately harvest plants if you're looking for a whole plant harvesting solution. Now, post-harvest, we've done all this work. What do we do next? We got to dry it. So maybe you're going to hang dry it. You're going to hang dry it. Be careful. Make sure your item is load rated to do the hang drying. Maybe you're going to use one of these hemp dryers. We do sell products like this that forced air from the bottom. You can do it heated or non-heated, depending on what you're looking to achieve. This is an example of a cool heating unit, or a cool unit from Dry Mods. They actually, from Flex Mod rather, they actually cool the material and do drying at about 65 degrees in this. And then there's continuous feed dryers. This is a vortex system, and then this is a continuous feed belt drying system that you might be able to use. And this is a turbine dryer, a portable unit that's been set up for a custom harvester. Something like this here, very expensive, runs a couple $1 million. Maybe you're going to need to do some processing after this, depending on, again, what does your customer want. So hand stripping, this has been the most common way of dealing with hemp in the past, but there's other ways of dealing with this now. So sometimes people will shred this material. We've got these great shredders. You can do this green. Some people will actually shred the entire plant, separate out the stalk, or sometimes people will do shredding after they've done some sort of separation before they go into extraction. This is an example of a bucker. So if you want to strip the flower from the stalk, this is a great way of doing that. This will do about 1,500 pounds a day with a couple of operators, and is great for smokable flower as well as smaller grows. And then this is a large scale flower stem separator. So if you've got huge amounts of biomass that you need to separate the stalk from the flower, this is a way that can get done. And then seed cleaning. So depending on if you've got seed in your flower, which you may, this is a way to get that seed out of there before you go into extraction. Bringing seed into the extraction method is going to reduce your throughput. So anytime you can clean up that material, that's something you want to do. And then trimming. If you're doing smokable flower, you're going to need to consider some sort of trimmer, whether it's a high velocity trimmer like this, or it's a lower velocity batch trimmer. That's something you're going to need to consider. We do offer the trimmer, which is a continuous feed trimming solution. And then storage. you got to be considering how long you're going to sit on this product. Typically, your extractor is not going to take it off your hands at the end of the season, so you're going to have to be able to handle that and store that. We rarely recommend hemp sack. If you're going into a super sack, hemp sack is a great liner. It's going to do a lot of things for you. It's going to provide UV protection, humidity control. It's going to keep the smell down. It's anti-static. It's just an overall good product that's going to help maintain your cannabinoid levels without having the degradation that you might see if you don't store them properly. So that's how you deal with flower production. Now, fiber production, a lot simpler. You're going to drill it, or you're going to do seeding. Mid-season cultivation, don't really have to worry about it. Harvest, there's a few ways of doing this. So let's take a look at, this is not a video of a piece of equipment that we've made, but we have made this piece of equipment before. Their video is better than ours. What they're doing here is bringing the stalk in and chopping that and windrowing the material. This is a great solution for large-scale agriculture. They'll use the same piece of equipment to come back and pick this stalk up, and then they will put it into a baler at that point. So when you're looking at baling, this is what a square baler looks like. There's a picture of a round bale. And this is what happens with those bales, ideally, is processing. So this is a decortication facility that was in the state of Nebraska that's no longer operating. But this gentleman over here, John Lupian, is working on setting up another facility elsewhere in the country. This is an example of what a decorticator actually does. So this unit is made by Power Zone in Colorado, actually Formation Ag now. So when you take a look at this, you're going to see the separation start to occur when they feed the material into this plant. And that's really what decortication is separating the hurd from the fiber. So they're feeding the stalk into this. There's a little bit of crushing action that's going on. Out comes the fiber. And down through the bottom is going to be the hurd. We're going to see that in just a moment. That's the hurd material falling through the bottom. And that's an example of what decortication looks like. So, grain harvesting. Grain planted a lot like fiber. Typically, you're going to use some sort of planter, whether it be an air seeder, or just a regular planter, or what we've got here actually is a precision film planter. So one of the neat things about using this precision film planter is right here. You can just see the size of the root structure at 11 weeks is substantially larger. You're going to get a much better start with your plant, and it might be a great option instead of doing seedlings with transplanting. So when you're doing grain, you're probably going to do some level of cultivation until the crop is about 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall, and then you're going to stop. And the canopy will take over and drown out the rest of the weeds. Again, we always recommend some sort of imaging service, and this is a great application for that drone again. When it comes to harvest, when you're doing grain, a few different ways of doing this as well. So depending on your variety, you're going to have to look at what kind of equipment you want to use. Here's an example of what our super crop header is doing in Kentucky. This is a really short grain crop, and we're bringing in a lot of material here. Ideally, you're going to want to look for a grain crop that's going to have grain in the top third of the plant, so that you're not harvesting the whole plant like we are here. If you're ending up with taller varieties, you're going to want to look at how you're going to be able to just attack that third. And we do have a system that'll raise the header in the air 9 feet for you. Here's an example of doing grain with a stripper header and actually vacuuming or actually collecting the flour that's going to be extracted later into this cart. Again, one of the challenges here, it is going to be a lower grade CBD, much lower percentage. So when you're looking at your extractor, you got to keep that in mind. So here's some combine settings, which you're more than welcome to come to our website and get. But with grain, you do need to start drying just like you do with your flour. You've got about 120 minutes to start the cooling and drying process. You're harvesting your grain very wet, 18 to 22% to reduce the shatter. So a standard bin grain dryer will work just fine for you. And then storage with grain, same thing. Standard bin equipment will work out well. And then as for multi-crop harvesting, you know, we've got some solutions. If this is what you're looking to do, we've got a double header system that we can help supply you. Although one of the challenges that we have here in the United States is a lot of these products that we see on the internet are designed for the production of animal feed, and that's not typically what we're doing yet here in the United States. So some of these ideas will work, some of them are a little bit too early for us, but if you want to talk about them, we're more than willing to talk through them with you. So please visit our website. This is our Bish Enterprises website, www.bishenterprise.com. Or if you're looking for the hemp items, please go to our Hemp Harvest Works website, www.hempharvestworks.com. Thank you, and I appreciate everyone joining me today. Have a great day, everyone.